Landsberg Prison is remembered mostly in history for a site where Adolf Hitler was held following his failed attempt to seize control of Munich and spark revolution in Germany. It was the place where the future dictator of Germany would be held in relative luxury, as imprisonments go, for 8 months, and here he would write Mein Kampf with his Nazi Party cronies, such as Rudolf Hess. But it was a site after the Second World War where hundreds of Nazis and former members of staff inside of concentration camps would be executed. The gallows there would be in use following war crimes trials, and because of this, it became a place where many of the worst monsters of the Third Reich took their final breaths. Join us today as we look at the gallows of Landsberg Prison, and remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Landsberg Prison was built between 1905 and 1908 and was initially established with a capacity of 500 prisoners. After the First World War, part of the prison was changed to allow for fortress imprisonment, which was considered an honourable type of incarceration in which privileged prisoners could have some luxuries inside of the prison, and here they would be allowed visitors in a relaxed environment. It was here where Hitler would spend his time after the Munich Putsch, but after he seized control and power inside of Germany and instigated his Nazi regime, Landsberg would be a place where political prisoners would soon be held. It was a Nazi fortress, and in 1942, 4 policemen sentenced in the Guernsey police trial were deported briefly to Landsberg Prison before being sent to other concentration camps. It was also a place where operations allegedly were performed, as a prisoner in 1943 named Alfred Baker stated, "Firstly, I am scarred for life, left lower jaw, owing to the fact that I was run down, lost weight to 52 kilos, and they had to operate on me. That was at Landsberg, Lech, Germany, at the foot of some mountains. The doctor said to me, 'I can't give you more food as you are my enemy.' The day after the operation, I had to go straight to work, forced labour. I also had an abscess in my ear a little time after the operation. On entering Buchenwald concentration camp, I was then kicked to hell by a big Nazi." The conditions inside of Landsberg during the Second World War do differ, as some lived within mild conditions, and others were forced to work jobs such as potato peelers in the kitchens. But from early 1944 until the end of the war, it's believed that the conditions deteriorated, and at least 210 people died there as a result of being executed or being starved to death. However, as the war ended in Europe, the prison was designated as War Criminal Prison No. 1 by the American Army to hold convicted Nazi war criminals. Inside here, it was guarded by men from the United States Army Military Police. Those who were arrested following the war of crimes against humanity and those who had worked inside of concentration camps were held at Landsberg. Many prisoners were made up of former guards and other members of staff such as cooks and carpos. Between 1945 and 1946, Landsberg would hold 110 prisoners convicted at the Nuremberg trials, and hundreds more criminals would be held there following the Dachau trials, and 18 prisoners were held following the Shanghai trials. However, it became more well known as a site where nearly 300 war criminals would be executed in a period of time lasting 5.5 years. In total, there were 259 death sentences carried out by hanging, and also 29 of them by firing squad inside of the prison gates. Following war crimes trials, the executions would be carried out, and often there were too many to be hanged on one day, so they would be carried out over a number. For example, 28 former SS guards from Dachau were hanged during 4 days at the prison on the gallows. Inside of Landsberg, the executions followed a similar pattern. The condemned would be held inside of the prison for a period of time until their scheduled date of execution, and they would be held in cells, often with other prisoners, in shared facilities. They were kept under close watch, and then on the day of the execution, they would be led out of their cells by the MPs, and also a priest, who would accompany them onto the gallows. They would be led into the courtyard of Landsberg, where there were 2 gallows assembled for simultaneous executions, so they could be carried out quicker when there were more people to be put to death. Using 2 gallows meant that 2 individuals could be hanged at once, and this would speed up the process. Whilst inside the courtyard, many guards would be there to witness the proceedings, and then the identity would be confirmed for the condemned at the bottom of the stairs. The war criminal, accompanied by the priest, was then taken up the many stairs off the gallows, which had a trap door, and then once they'd walked up the numerous stairs, They were asked for their final words. After this, they were handed over to the executioner, who would ensure that the arms and legs were secured before they were shuffled over the trap door. After this, the executioner placed a black hood over the condemned's head, before he then placed a noose over the head. When the lever was released, the condemned would plunge through the trap door, and they were left some time before death was confirmed, and then their body was placed in a coffin. If bodies were not claimed, they were buried inside of an unmarked grave in a cemetery next to the chapel. The prison was also used as a site of execution for US soldiers who had been court-martialed and also criminals. For example, Piotr Kemi, who had survived the concentration camps, was executed there as he had murdered a German couple and their young daughter. There were many high-ranking Nazis and former commandants of concentration camps who were hanged at Landsberg, and it was seen as a reliable site for executions to be carried out at. It was used alongside other prisons such as Hamlin, which was used by the British to execute Nazi war criminals, and this was where expert executioner Albert Pierpoint was based. Some notable prisoners who were held there include Karl Brandt, Hitler's former escort doctor and medical officer who was involved in the T4 programme and was responsible for the deaths of thousands. He was hanged there. Oswald Pohl, the head of the SS main Economic Administrative Office and a key administrator of the concentration camps, was also hanged at Landsberg, as was Hermann Pfister, a commandant of Buchenwald concentration camp. Others held at the prison include Joachim Peiper, a tank commander in the Waffen-SS, who was found guilty of being involved in the Malmedy massacre. He was held here for a number of years in prison, as was Sepp Dietrich, an SS commander. The final executions at Landsberg Prison occurred on the 7th of June 1951, but following this the prisoners began to be seen as political prisoners, and their releases were asked for. In May 1958, the US Army relinquished control of Landsberg, and the 4 prisoners were released, and these were all former high-ranking SS officers convicted during the Einsatzgruppen trial. Today Landsberg is still used as a prison and as a correctional facility that allows criminals a chance to reform by providing training and new skills where they can learn different trades such as plumbing, tailoring, bricklaying and others. The executions at Landsberg Prison saw over 250 Nazi war criminals walking to the gallows. Many of these individuals had been involved in the horrific crimes of the concentration camps, and also many were of the Einsatzgruppen, those responsible for massacring innocent people during the war. The place in which Adolf Hitler was held in luxury became the site where some of those who carried out his bidding for his despicable regime would meet their end at the gallows. These were convicted war criminals, and some of the people who caused much suffering during the Second World War to innocent people. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.